you have the confidence that you can accept the blow.
As a point of interest, none of my men wear protection in the groin. None.
After all, you wouldn't want your attacker to get injured.
That hurt my foot.
And we're live. We're live. Welcome, everyone. Good evening on this gorgeous Monday evening. Well, there may be storms where you are in the DFW area, so hope you're safe, you're cozy. But we're here. We're here to talk about soccer. We're here to talk about FC Dallas. We're here to talk about a bunch of draws. FC Dallas on the road at Chicago, 0-0. North Texas SC on the road at Tacoma Defiance, 1-1, but with the penalty shootout. 2 points there. And finally, the World Cup draw for Qatar 2022. Really, a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of fun things. We even have a cat live on the stream here to bring you the high-quality entertainment. This is exclusive. Oh, and the cat's messing with the mic even. You don't get this on other podcasts and other live streams. You just don't. You don't get this quality of production. So we're glad you're here. I'm Nathan. You can follow me at Nathan J. Hill on Twitter. There in the middle is Jose at El Chico Carmona.
Hello.
And at the end, our buddy Ishmael at Belcora Isma on Twitter. And Tommy. Oh, yeah. And Tommy LaBeouf may be joining us here in a few minutes. He'll pop on and join us as we get going here. So let's start with the top. Let's start before we get to World Cup stuff. Let's just start with our two teams that we follow here on the live stream specifically. With FC Dallas first. FC Dallas traveled to Chicago, and yeah, the conditions on the field were not ideal for a good flowing game of soccer. It was a mess out there. It was that wet Chicago feeling out there. But and I wrote this today on my After Dark post. Something we saw with Lucci Ball over the past couple of years, and really it's always a challenge for most teams in Major League Soccer. It's getting points on those away matches. It is so hard to do in Major League Soccer. You're at such a disadvantage because of travel and stuff. So FC Dallas goes to Chicago, holds them to a 0-0 draw. Not the prettiest game in the world, but hey, they came away with a point, and you take it at the end of the day. What were y'all's reactions to the match? Jose, we'll start with you, and I'll play some highlights while we chat about the game.
Well, I was happy that they got the point like everybody else. I think some people, depending on how you look at it, some people will say we're lucky we didn't concede and lose, and then there's some that will say we should have won. And honestly, I don't know what to take from this performance because of the weather being so bad. I mean, we're talking, it was like freezing rain out there. It was just, you saw people sliding around. Maybe some of those bad tackles were a result of people just not being able to stay on their feet and whatnot. So I don't want to take too much from this match. I will say that it's still one of the better road performances we've seen from this team in years. So I mean, that says a lot about how horrible we were on the road under Lucci. And I mean, if this is something to build on, then I think we can at least be happy that the good showing at New England and then it's something to build on.
Ishmael, what do you think? Yeah. Is this something to build on?
Yeah, I think we can't really take too much out of the performance. I don't really take that many positives. The defense was, again, very good most of the time. I just think it's it's difficult to extrapolate anything from this game. Uh, it was kind of like a uh, very fast-paced, boring game where each team would start attacking and then lose the ball,
So
and then
so
start
true.
attacking and lose the ball. So like nothing happened, and yet they were always moving. It wasn't like stale. So I mean, it was an interesting game. It's good to see that we can grind points on the road because I mean that's what playoff teams do when they don't dominate a game. They try to get whatever they can from it. Um, so I mean, overall, I think it was an okay score.
Yeah, you take a point on the road in this league. It can just be a big boost, especially if you end up dropping points at home, which FC Dallas already has. So any way you can make up that ground it's a nice thing. It was funny, Ishmael, because as you were talking, as you began to talk, was that moment in the highlights where Nanu was in on goal and really had one of the better, probably cleaner chances of the night, and just really couldn't get much on the ball and went right to the keeper. You know, it is hard in these conditions to judge players because it's tough to play in that kind of weather, and yet when a chance comes, you got to take the chance. So are you feeling any different about Nanu at this point in his fledgling FC Dallas career?
Well, you guys know how completely unbiased I am to his possible replacement. I have no opinions about Matumake, right? None at all. Um, but I mean, this like I know it's a small pool of data that we can take from it, and I don't really want to make too many uh, claims considering what happened when I made claims about Jesus 3 games in. But at the same time, what we see from Nanu, it's he does the exact same thing every game. He doesn't have a very skill set. He runs on the touchline. He's very fast. He'll give you 1 to 3 great crosses in the game where it's like pinpoint. I mean, I don't think that really matters because Jesus can't really head the ball that well, and Hara can, but not really. So I mean, his crosses generally, when they're really good, still don't do much of anything. Um, I just, man, it's kind of like it's less the chance. The chance was disappointing, but there were so many times in that game where he just runs straight. That's all he does. It's 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 almost like Obrion, but he gives you a little bit more, like skill set wise, like his crossing, his decision making is generally better, but like athletically, that's all he does. He just runs on the touchline, and that sometimes will lead to something great, like a counterattack, or it will just lead to him running into the defender and then leaving a massive gap in the back where you have to have Hedges covering, which is always good, Hedges or Paxton, which is always good, but they're 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 coming off injury-ridden seasons, and I don't know, man. I think, hey, I'm gonna make the claim that Emma would finish that, but I have no biases.
I am so glad that you mentioned Obrian because having Obrian and Nanu on the same side was maddening. I I'm not kidding. I wasn't gonna drink that day, and I started to drink because I was sitting there watching this, get infuriated watching these guys, taking turns to see who could like out bad touch the other guy, and they both just run in a straight line. So I really, really missed Areola, and so did this team. And I mean, maybe it's the field conditions, but you got to think that Areola, I mean, would have at least led to a little bit more possession and maybe a couple more
Mm-hmm.
shots on goal.
Mm-hmm.
God,
I
that was
agree. No,
that
I
was
agree.
maddening. Please, I don't want to see that again. I mean, I'm sure we will, but maybe U.S. Open Cup or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what this tells me most of all is that when Obrion plays, you can't play Nanu, but when Ariel, like when Obrian plays, you can't play Nanu, but when Areola plays, I think you can because Areola cuts inside, and that does give Nanu more space to just run, right? So I think when Obrian needs to start, when Areola's getting called up, or if it's Open Cup games, or just something like that, then you kind of have to play Tumasi because remember Tumasi did a lot like during last season, like doing those
I
inside,
agree.
which were like almost Hollingshead like. We compared him to Hollingshead last year a bunch of times because he'd do that, and I think that just gives you a little bit of variety because when you have just two speedsters on the touchline, just in the same area, just running and not doing anything, I don't know, for like
Yeah.
a fast-paced, boring game, that's like the epitome of a fast-paced, boring game right there.
And then you combine that with Quinion
Yeah, just not a good
uh,
game.
at the instead of
He
Surreal.
he just looked out of form. I mean, like that getting the yellow card so early. I mean, gosh. Um,
He's got a gambling style though. I mean, I'm not surprised by it because he every game we've seen him, he's made a lot of diving tackles, and combined with the fact that he's not in form and that field, I mean, I'm shocked he didn't get red carded. I'm shocked he was towing that line the whole game. We're like, good God, this man's gonna leave us at 10 men, and we're all just waiting on it.
well, hey, let's listen to a couple of post game reactions to the match, and then we'll of course talk about some other things. But let's talk about Paul Arriola. Of course, Paul was out for this one because he was dealing with an injury. And here's Nico's. Nico was asked about that by a Chicago reporter.
Yeah, he has a minor injury in his adductor, and then we thought that he's better for him to get treatment and rest. And it will be a day-by-day situation for him. But it's a very minor injury, but it's better in these particular cases that you could see what we did also with Jesus and seeing what happened to Shaqiri throughout the game. I think we made the right call making that decisions and resting our players to make sure keep them healthy.
Yeah, so appreciate that from Nico, and especially in a game condition like this, and you got two guys coming back from the international break where they gave a good chunk of minutes. Probably a good thing to just play it a little bit safe and keep two of your national team stars and your two team stars on the mend and use them as needed. But you kind of was. I was kind of hoping out of this match when I saw the lineup that Franco Jara would have a good game, or that we would see some other guys step up. And while Velasco looked good, I think was part of some of the attacks, and I think Paxton and Cervania were solid as well. Cervania just so active. You just didn't see. I just didn't see those guys step up, and Obrian particularly for me was just like, come on, we're gonna need you to take your game to another level at some point, or else he is gonna be on that trade block, on that potential selling block at some point to get another winger in that could fit a bit better and provide some better support. Although maybe Schoen is that down the line here, but yeah, just disappointed. Obrian seemed like he might start the season fast, which would have helped, and now here we are. And he's just he's Obrian.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of disappointing because I was one of the doubters. Like I remember our end of year pod when we were talking about Obrian, and most people were like, "Yes, he's frustrating, but at least he's getting the numbers right." And I mean, that was kind of like the consensus because at the end of the year he started to bag goals. There has been no improvement, and I wouldn't say he's degress. I just think it's the same as the start of last year. It's just the same kind of playing style. I mean, you say you hope he gets on the chopping block if he continues to perform like this. I don't know, man. Lamar stayed here for like 2-3 years, I think, because he gets the numbers, but just is frustrating to play with, and it's a different kind of frustration for his playing style. But it's kind of the same thing. And I mean, Obrian, I think at some point he's the only natural right winger on the team besides Areola, right? And I mean we have wingers that can play that position, but at the end of the day, he is going to be a second choice behind Areola, and he will get minutes throughout the year, no matter no matter what like no matter like what happens. Like if Areola gets injured, it's going to be Oberon. It's not going to be Khalil or Shun. It's going to be Oberon. So he's going to get chances. It's just, man, if this keeps going, he's still doing the diving thing, and every time I see him dive, I just want to just like shake my screen out of frustration because it doesn't work. I don't know why he keeps doing it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, and honestly, I think we see his value. I mean, this is a guy that's going to be an excellent super sub. Running with his speed against tired legs. Same thing with Hara. Hara comes in late and playing against tired legs. That slowness that he has isn't as big as an issue as it is at the beginning of the match. So I think you're starting to see who our starting 11 are and who our backups are, and you're starting to see a drop off at some positions, and that's where it's like, okay, you know, like so you can argue between Nanu and Tuamasi. I'm not sure there's any separation there yet, but there's definitely some separation on the wings and at
Hmm.
forward and at midfield. There's some positions where there is some separation, and we're starting to see it.
Well, let's listen to Paxton Pomacole's post game kind of comment just about the match, about the draw.
I mean, playing away, first of all, is never easy. And then in those conditions, it's one of the toughest conditions I've played in personally. And, growing up in the Texas wind, that's not fun either. But, I mean, it was like 35 degrees and raining. And the first half was okay, but by the second half, the grass was really long. And so there started getting puddles everywhere. And it was just a messy game altogether. And so a lot of it was played in the middle of the field. But happy to come out with a clean sheet and get a point. Although, of course, every game we play, we won 3. It's considering everything, happy to get one.
Yeah, happy to get one. I think that's kind of where we are. So we're okay with the draw. We move on. We're back at home this coming weekend against Colorado. Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Before we move on, I want to just
sure.
say one last thing on the Fire FCD match, and I want to point out that it's a missed opportunity for both clubs. These are two clubs that are playing much better than anybody anticipated. And of course, you have Shaqiri, who got injured.
Mhm.
Hopefully, it's not too bad. So this was and it was on Twitter, and it was nationally televised broadcast, and this was an excellent opportunity for either team to attract some of that national audience and grow their fan base outside of their, you know, um, respective areas. And so the fact that it was such a horrible weather and the way the game played out, it just feels like a really lost opportunity for both teams. And that's one thing that kind of saddened me. It's like, man, wouldn't have been great if the weather was better and these teams, wrestled and dazzled us with some stuff, but instead, we got to see what we got
Yeah.
to see, and like I said, it just feels like a missed opportunity for both clubs. The winner of this match, if there was a winner, or even if it was a couple of goals scored on both sides, would have definitely, I think, improved their profiles.
Yeah. And just one last thing, I'll say that Franco Hara does not look even 45 minutes fit. And I think that might be slightly, like, people were saying, nah, he should stay on. But, like, by halftime, I wanted, like, Khalil or someone more energetic on the field. When he gets the ball, he's a good target forward, plays a little bit of a false nine by, like, dropping a little bit, but he doesn't like, he does those, like, 15 minutes of pressing. That's about it. I just, yeah, when Jesus doesn't play, he's our backup. That's slightly worrying, just a little bit.
Mm.
And I
All
think
right.
that I gotta agree that that's worrying that we don't have a third option. Let's face it, there is no third option behind those two, and that's one thing the team needs to address in the summer window.
All right. Well, good. We'll keep an eye on that and we'll see how that unfolds. I mean, it's still a little early in the season, so some guys may still be getting fit. You know, Frank Haro did start out the season injured, so maybe he's still on that course. But yeah, I agree. I kind of want a little bit more from him. But we're also seeing this aging striker who had already had a lot of miles on his legs before coming to Dallas, so hasn't ever looked very spry. So if you know the address of the Fountain of Youth, send it to Frisco. All right. Also elsewhere in MLS Next Pro, North Texas SC came away with 2 points. That's right, 2 points. We're still wrapping our heads around that. I didn't even process it. So I thought the rule change in MLS Next Pro was that if the game ends in a draw, it goes to shootout, and of course the winning team gets 3 points. So like there were going to be no draws. But no, there is still a draw. You still get a point if the game ends 1-1 as it did with North Texas and Tacoma Defiance. But then there's still a shootout where you get a point if you win the shootout. So North Texas won the shootout, came away with a 2-1 effort there. 2 points. Sorry, and really interesting match. And I will continue on my soapbox that Antonio Carrera is legit. I like this kid in goal for North Texas, and he had a great save on the penalty kick early on, which helped North Texas secure that extra point, which is going to be huge in this MLS Next Pro season. Otherwise, a goal from Bernard Comungo, a really nice goal. Also a game with tough weather conditions. Jose, what were your takeaways from this match?
All in all, an excellent performance on the road for North Texas. I mean, this is the same Tacoma team that put 4 on an RSL team that's similarly built, although slightly younger than North Texas. So there was the concern that they would be just too big, too physical. Against Real Monarchs, they started 8 senior team members. Against North Texas, they started 6. But even their players that they have signed to their roster are still, we're talking grown men, you know, at least college senior age or older. So I mean, this is a very mature team, a very physical team. They were at home, and honestly, a point, 2 points is a fantastic result because Tacoma is a playoff caliber team, and getting a point on the road against that kind of team is a huge confident boost for a North Texas team that, by the way, isn't even 100% yet. They're still missing Nicky Hernandez, who would be a starter alongside Waldeck and Ferry if he was healthy, and also the kid from Bayern, who would probably be the starter at the 9. So I'm not saying that they're guaranteed starters, but they would at least be rotational starters. North Texas does like to rotate their players. So excellent. I'm very excited for what I saw from the team. The defense improved slightly. That had a lot to do with the fact that they sent our number 6 pick overall, Bartlett, down to start.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the camera wasn't all that great, and they still had their shaky moments. They still had them, but like I said, only allowing 1 goal on the road. They scrambled back good, and you can still see that the defense is still going to be a headache going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest improvement was Bartlett, and I mean, he's not MLS level, but my God, the drop off from him to Amadume is insane because like Bartlett is, he's very position aware. He doesn't get too out of position. He does have defensive gaffes, and I think that was highlighted by people who were watching preseason early on that were worried that he wasn't MLS level. But I mean, I think he's definitely better than Amadume, and I think he's better than Nice. So I think, again, I think at some point, realistically, Waldeck's going to continue starting, right? Because he's the captain. But I think when time goes on, when they want to have Ferry on the field and Nikki and Santiago Ferreira, because Santiago Ferreira continues to play pretty well. He still needs to develop. He's playing pretty well. Um, it's going to be very difficult. Like I don't think like Waldeck will probably play, but it's good to know that they have other veteran players uh, that can play because Bartlett's 24 and I don't think he's ever going to be an MLS starter, but he can be again an MLS Next lifer or a USLC lifer, and I think he'll give a lot of leadership to the team.
Well, I want to say that like you said, he does make his mental gaps, but that's when you see that speed and athleticism come into play, where his recovery looks really excellent, and I think that's you see why they drafted him, why they're like, hey, if maybe given a year under our system, we can get this guy to minimize those, then he can be a solid backup at the MLS level. And maybe that's a low ceiling. Maybe they hope it is higher. But I mean, a lot of the negatives we hear about him are the same negatives we heard from Tafari when he was taken. Now, mind you, Tafari's younger and has a higher ceiling, but you see why the team likes him. You know, they wanted a player that they're like, hey, this guy has the tools. If we can get him polished up, he could help us this year. Where we think the other guys will need a full year before they can help us, even though they may have higher ceilings. So I think that's what they went with. I also want to point out that Santi Ferreira is another player that has been really talked down as a prospect, where people have been unimpressed by him and whatnot. But here he is. He started 2 games and he actually looked better this game than the previous game, and that's just a kid getting comfortable with being a pro, which is one thing that I don't think FC Dallas gets a lot of credit for. People will talk about the drop in talent in the academy, this and that, but they have an established pathway, and they're constantly pushing players, putting them at higher levels than maybe they're ready for, saying, hey, if you're too good at U17s, then you're not going to play U17s anymore. We're bumping you up. We're going to find where you're going to stall, and then we got to see you push through that to see if you can get to the next level. And that's what they're doing with Santi. And he's looking good right now. It's only 2 games, but hey, that's 2 starts, and he showed improvement. And I think that's one thing that Dallas doesn't get credit for, is even if people don't think they have the best talented academy anymore, they seem to have this down where they can push players and push them to get to a higher level.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Lot to watch for. And of course, I found it funny that our number 6 super draft pick is now.
But him and Parker's there too. But they need
Parker
minutes, right?
good. I mean, I like
they need minutes because Martinez is playing really good, and Bartlett's not gonna get in ahead of Tafari. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Parker can't get in because Farfan is playing so good. So I mean, it's understandable, and hopefully once U.S. Open play shows up, they'll get starts and get a shot to get more minutes further. I want to point out that I wrote down my little MLS Next Pro top 10. I'll share it for you guys real quick. This is just my opinion.
We're ready. All right,
based
we're
on
ready.
The teams that are available, based on results. And number 10 team is the Earthquakes 2. Really, really young team. They got a great academy, one of the top 5 academies. And these kids, they had 2 road games, and they won their first road game. The only team last week that won, by the way. And then on a short week, we're talking they played like on Wednesday, and then they traveled and played Houston this weekend on short rest and almost got out of there with a draw. They lost, but they were the better team, and Houston was very lucky to come out of there. The next team is Tacoma, who just lost. Didn't lost. They drew against North Texas. And mind you, I think very highly of Tacoma, and they're only this low because of results elsewhere. I think they're a much better team, and they'll get to prove it next week. I think they travel to St. Louis next week. So very tough team. Orlando City B actually is my number 8 team. I'm surprised at how well these guys are doing. They've adopted the Pareja style of playing good defense, hitting you on the counter, and it's paying off. I mean, this is a team that has consistently underperformed, and it's been around, in multiple leagues and gone away because they played so bad. So shocking that they're playing so good, but you're starting to see a little bit of that Pareja magic seeping into their academy. So good for them. Dynamo is my number 7 team, the only 2-win team in the league, and that's because of home cooking and weak matchups. So I'm not sold on this team yet, but I do believe they have a really tough match coming up. They got to travel to Sporting Kansas City, which is a tough team. So we'll find out if the Dynamo are for real. Right now, they are the only 2-win team in the league. Then Sporting Kansas City is 6, solid team. They've stocked their roster well, and so far the results show it. Union 2 is my number 5 team. They've only played 1 game, and they look great. They got a great academy. They were supposed to play Inter Miami, which is another highly rated team. That got moved. They'll be playing Wednesday, and I will be watching that game because the winner of that game, if there is a winner, is probably your number 1 team in the league. Those teams are 2 very good young teams. The kind of teams you want to see in this league, by the way. Number 4 is Revs 2. They're another solid team. They play good defense. They don't beat themselves, and then they are opportunistic on offense. And they crushed Rochester 3-1. So looking good. I got North Texas SC as number 3. Maybe that's a little home cooking me, but I think very highly of the team. I think they can be leapfrogged by other teams if other teams, get certain wins and whatnot. Inter Miami is my number 2 team. Tons of talent on this team. They play very. They used to be a very helter-skelter team last year, even though they have a ton of attacking talent. This year they play more defensive-minded, hit you on the counter. They have so many weapons. Just think of a North Texas. They're like similar to North Texas, in all honesty, but with better defense. And then, of course, number 1 is, until proven wrong, it's St. Louis. I mean, their team is just ridiculously old to be playing. They have to be playing in the reserve league. There's players on this team, about 8 of them, that are going to be on the senior roster next year. And it's going to be even more ridiculous when they get their incoming summer guys. I mean, St. Louis, they have no depth, by the way. No depth. Their entire depth is all 17-year-old, 16-year-old kids. So as long as they're healthy, they're the number 1 team.
All right. You heard it here first. That's some good stuff. Cluing us in onto MLS Next Pro. All right, let's close out the show by getting into the other big draw. And I, of course, went and watched the draw live as Qatar 2022, as the groups were drawn. The little bouncy balls were selected, and was excited. And of course, there was all this dancing and all this stuff beforehand. Of course, they got to do all that kind of stuff. But how are we feeling? I think I'm throwing up on the screen right now the final draw. Of course, USA fell into Group B, and against England, which is a team that is very, very good. But we know, too, that we can get in their heads because historically the USA has had some success in a lot of ways against England. Anyway, but that's then Iran, which is a good team too. I think it's easy to say, oh, right, that's an easy win, but I've been pushed back against by Ishmael and others that, no, this is a team that's legit. And the Euro playoff spot, which could go a lot of different ways, could be pretty tough for the U.S., could also be a kinder matchup. But regardless, I think the question is Group B a group of death? I don't think so, right? I don't think any of us think that's true. No. That it's tough as, say, maybe what is the group E? I mean, for example, which is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, that's, in my opinion, the toughest group there is.
Which one?
I'm glad we did not. That's Spain, Germany,
E?
Japan.
Wait, I couldn't hear you. What?
No.
Group E.
E?
Group E. That's yeah.
I don't think that's a group of death. It's Spain and Germany. They're going through.
And Japan is actually, I mean, they're the top team out of Asia. In theory, they shouldn't be able to beat Spain and Germany, but I mean, for a third team, that's a very dangerous team. Who would you think, Ishmael? Is my opinion. Who do you think is the group of death?
I mean, I think the group of death is probably Group A, because I can see all of those teams going through. Qatar, because they're the hosts, and also they would look pretty decent at that tournament that they played here in North America. Ecuador is always very consistent. They're very they have talent in most positions. Senegal is the best team in Africa currently, and Netherlands is a very, very strong European side. I really don't know who to pick out of that group. Like when I think about group of death, it's that all of the teams are like decent, because they're no, it's almost rare. It's very rare for like a group to have like top teams, like possible world champions teams. I think another one that you could possibly make the argument for is maybe Group C, because I mean Argentina.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, Argentina is probably going through, and probably Poland, but it's like Mexico. If they don't make it out of the group, that's quite historic. They've made it out of the group the last couple of World Cups. They're very good, or at least they have been. Group F, Ben just said Group F. That's a very decent shout, because Belgium and Croatia are both very good teams, but Canada just won CONCACAF, and Morocco is my home country, and they are very good at grinding out results. They have very good attacking talents and very decent defensive side. Midfield's kind of bad, but I mean, they're like, honestly, there isn't a group that I'm looking at, honestly, that I could make a legitimate claim of who goes through besides Group E, which is why I was kind of surprised you guys said that.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's Spain and Germany.
And mind you, I'm glad that you bring up all these other groups, because the group no one's bringing up is Group B, and I want to point that just shows you that as far as groups go, it's a manageable group for the USA. Now, forget everybody's anxiety about how we're gonna fuck it up or anything like that. The question is, if they play well, could they make it out of this group? And I say yes. If they play well, this is a group that they can advance out of, and so, in my opinion, it's a good draw for the U.S. and of course, we'll get to the anxieties later. But I think you have to be pretty happy about the group that we landed on compared to the other groups, which look far more dangerous than Group B.
Yeah, I mean, with Group B, I think so. The teams that are for the Euro playoff are Ukraine, Scotland, and Wales.
Yes.
Man, if Wales or Scotland makes it, then that game versus England is going to be very, very tense. If Ukraine makes it, they are now on a world stage where they will push everything on because of what's happening currently. And it's like, I think country spirit is a legitimate factor in these games.
Yes.
So the US doesn't have an easy group per se. I think the victory against England is certain because they're the weakest team of the group, obviously. But the other two teams are very difficult teams that we have to play at our highest levels for us to.
I agree they're difficult, but I'm just saying they're not certain losses or God, I hope we can get a draw. Though they're not those kind of games. So it will come down to making the right choice on the roster and making the right thing. I mean, Berhalter is going to have to make sure he does not get outcoached in those games. And that's honestly, that's the biggest concern for the team.
Like, I mean, if we take Tim Ream, then maybe we have something to worry about.
Yeah, good. Well, and I just like for me, like it's thinking through those situations. Like when U.S. played Germany in the last World Cup 8 years ago, Tim Howard had to sort of basically stand on his head. One of the great goalkeeping performances in a U.S. kit, where
That was Belgium.
Belgium. Sorry, thank you. Where pretty much like the Belgian players like applauded Tim after the game, was just amazed by his performance. Like the thing is, you don't want to go into your group and think like we have to play at this insane level, this world beater level, just to hope to get a result here. You want to be able to go in and be like, hey, we just need to play well. We need to play strong, and we have a chance. If we just play well, we're not all standing on our head and playing the greatest game of our lives. We can come out of this group with results. We can advance. And I think that's Group B. It's still going to be very tough. They're going to have to play well. And there's no gimme. I don't think so. And there's a lot of storylines in this group. And, of course, we know England has had a history of stinking it up on the level, on the World Cup level. And they may very well. You just never know. But USA still has got to put something together. But you'd rather have that scenario than, hey, we're going to be hoping for a Hail Mary every game. A phenomenal world-class shot just to be able to get a chance to tie the game or to get 3 points. So it's going to be definitely an interesting draw.
I think Group B is definitely the most politically heavy group.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, because I think probably, I'm not counting out Ukraine because they are very good, but it's probably going to be Scotland or Wales, and that's their first World Cup in a while. And then Iran versus US, and also they've only won 2 games at World Cups. One was the last World Cup against Morocco, and their other win was in 1998 against the US. So, I mean, like when people say that politics doesn't exist at the World Cup, yeah, it does. Like these games are like, it's very representative of our country. So they have to be like, we can't have a game where Pulisic plays like a black hole and just gets the ball, dribbles, and loses it. We can't really have a game like that in Group B. It has to be top performance, like an 8 out of 10 from everybody.
And we can't have a game where our backline players are giving away the ball in their own side, which we saw multiple times, and we're lucky to not get punished. You'll get punished at this level.
Yeah, you will. And of course, this can be a different environment. Qatar is different than a lot of other venues. It's just there's going to be a lot that's going to be very interesting about it. And especially with COVID going on, who knows what that's going to mean if players start testing positive, and hopefully not. Hopefully everything's simmered down by then. But there's a lot of those scenarios. So that's why I think there's a benefit to the U.S. in this World Cup of that we can send a fairly deep squad with a lot of flexibility. When you got guys like Killen Acosta, Tyler Adams, who can play different positions and give you some quality all over the place if someone has to be unavailable. But it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky. So, yeah, I didn't come away thinking like this is a cupcake group. I don't think there is a cupcake group at this level. It's really that would be really difficult, but to find that scenario. But the U.S. has a chance, and they can put together some strong performances and have a chance to go forward. It's going to be exciting to watch. Yeah. Well, good. All right, when it's early, of course, it's early. There's a lot that can happen. I mean, that's one of the other scenarios that I'll be curious about is like who is in form in about 5 months, right? When this is coming, when these 4 months or so, when these teams are going to be selected, who on the U.S. roster right now is going to be in a different and more positive club situation, particularly like a Reggie Cannon.
I mean, the one that impacts us is if Pepe continues to not score, is Jesus the starter? Like, because right now he's not, but I mean, if Pepe, we hope Pepe gets informed. It's Pepe, but if he doesn't get informed and Jesus has like a 20 goals and assists season, does he start? Because if he starts at the World Cup, he goes. We get another 20 million, right? I mean, I think that's the likelihood. People were
I
saying that
think
20 million is too high, but I mean, he gets a World Cup like that. That's why a lot can happen between
Right.
now and then. I mean, there's a non-zero chance that Paxton gets called up. I think it's pretty close to zero, but it's not entirely improbable. So I mean, it just there's the core of like 10, 11 players that I think are like guaranteed to get called up. The Pulisic's, the McKinneys, the Adams. But I mean, everything else is really up for grabs. And I mean, it really depends on form and performances in the next. I think we have 4 or 5. No, I think it's just 4 international windows where we play friendlies. I think until Qatar. So I mean, that's like probably like 8 games where players get to show who they are. We have the Nations League. This is crunch time for a lot that 12 to 23 roster spots, and like whether you make it to the biggest stage in world soccer or not.
And I'm glad you brought up Jesus. You know, Jesus can do a lot to improve or hurt his value from now to the World Cup. And I think I'm not going to say 20 million, but I think if at the end of the year he performs well for club and country, I think it would be reasonable to have similar expectations of what the original thought we were going to get for Pepe, which is around 10 to 15. And then hopefully you get a team that either a bidding war or a team that's overzealous and overpays. And I think that's would be ideal. You know, I'm hoping, you know, I'm more concerned with him having a great club season than a World Cup. But if he's a starter for the U.S. come World Cup, it's because he's had a great season.
Yeah, a lot to see as this unfolds. As Ben says, maybe the rosters will be a little bit bigger to make space for those anticipated COVID kinds of things. It could be, and I mean, it's going to be interesting.
No, do not give Berhalter more players to tinker with. No more tinkering. Settle on your starting 11. Figure out who your guys that are key reserves are. That need to, you know, synchronize.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, good. Well, let's leave it there tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Ben, for all of his comments and things tonight.
Thanks,
kind of a strange weekend. A lot of draws. Not always a lot to talk about after a 0-0 draw away, but we had plenty, and especially with again the USA picture shaping up for the World Cup. It's an exciting time to be a soccer fan, and we have a lot more soccer this weekend.
By the way, both FC Dallas and North Texas play Colorado this weekend, although it's not a doubleheader. They scheduled, of course, the Dallas game on Saturday, and the NTX game is on Sunday. I don't know why they did it that way.
We get the return of Barrios, Acosta, and Acosta. We got the 2 Acostas and Barrios coming back to town.
No, that's right.
And not the Acosta that's in the national team, but the other Acosta guy.
Oh yeah, Acosta, like Kellen left. I forgot. He went to LA.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. But yes.
We get
you have me a little
Acosta.
confused. But Acosta is coming back.
That's right. All right. Well, good night, everybody.
I think we can get a win. By the way, I'm definitely picking 3 points.
Yeah.
Definitely. If they can keep this home cooking going, no, I agree, because Colorado still, they just don't have a striker. I mean, I wish we could pawn Frank O'Hara off to them,
but they're a solid team. I mean, they are
a solid team, well coached. Yeah.
Everything but the striker is like set for them. Everything but that is good.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. Good night, everybody. Thank you. And of course,
good night.
Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you find podcasts. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Good night, Isabel. Nathan.